How's it going, y'all? Aiden Anderson here with another round of Candidate Candids. In this series, we talk to candidates running in the local elections to learn more about them, their platform, and what they hope to do in office if elected. We're focusing on the county level races this year, and in this video, we've got County Sheriff Candidate Chris Middleton. Let's get into it. How are you doing?
I'm doing well, thank you.
Excellent, excellent. And how has the campaign been treating you so far?
Pretty good. It's, pretty tough getting your name out there, so, but I'm doing the best I can.
One thing that has come up in a number of conversations I've had with folks is just, especially with the county, like nobody pays attention to the county a lot of the times. And so they see somebody who's running, and a lot of the times it's coming from corridors that they don't know very much about. So give us your life in a nutshell. What you've been up to, what you do, what you're interested in.
That's a long story. I'm 55 years old. So, what I've been up to now is I actually, I help manage a cabinet shop. We do custom cabinets, stonework. He had somebody that had been kind of headhunting me for a while to come to work for him, to kind of restructure his leadership, restructure how things are done, help him with job site management, employee management, hiring, firing, those types of things. And that's kind of what I've been doing for the past year and a half. Before that, I was with the state police for 10 years. I was a sergeant for 7 of those. Before that, I was with the Latah County Sheriff's Office for 5 years, from 2008 to 2013. Prior to that, a lot of different experiences. I was in construction, built houses, did remodels. I've sold lumber professionally to professional contractors over a few years. I'm also I graduated from Whitworth College. I have a bachelor's degree in physical education as well as I was a certified Washington teacher. And then prior to that, I was a farmer. So I've done a lot of things. I played 4 years of collegiate baseball. That's kind of the reason I went to college. Well, it was either
not many people can say they went to college for baseball.
Right. It was either that or the military. And so when I got a baseball scholarship, I decided to give it a roll. So, and it was a lot of fun. I don't have any regrets. So, but that's kind of, I grew up in the Southeast. I was born in Alabama. I didn't move out here till I was 11, but I haven't left the Pacific Northwest. It's just kind of been my home. So.
So were you originally a native Idahoan, or did you start in Washington?
I was just across the border in Washington. You could pretty much call me an Idahoan because I spent every waking moment I could in Idaho. But I couldn't move there until I was 18. Once I graduated from college, I was kind of stubborn. I'm kind of that way when I want something the way I want it. That's just kind of the way I am. And I didn't want to leave the area to teach. I wanted to stay in the area to teach, and it just was really hard to find a job. And so eventually I had to give that up and get a job to pay for a baby on the way.
Gotcha.
Which I did, and that's when I got into the construction world. But I loved growing up in Tico, Washington. It was kind of gave me everything I am about my work ethic and who I am. So, and why I work as hard as I do.
Yeah, and how would you describe that work ethic?
I'm pretty much the kind of guy, if I tell you I'm going to do it, I'm going to do it. And if I can't get it done, I'll be the first guy to tell you that I can't get it done, but if you give me more time, I will get it done. That's just kind of the way I've always been. It can be a good thing and a bad thing. It kind of drives my wife up the wall, because once I start a project, I usually wear myself out to finish it. Kind of the same way in law enforcement. When I want to do something, I really set my mind to, I really do it. I dig in and I get it done. I've done a lot of things in law enforcement. I've been trained phlebotomist. I was a DUI instructor. I was a post-basic instructor. I was a forensic interview specialist. I was a grant writer, which I wrote the grant actually. That's kind of one of my claims to fame with the Sheriff's Office. I wrote the grant that got their new dispatch center.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. I spent a lot of time studying active shooters. When I was with the Sheriff's Office, we had a lot of the large school shootings at that time, and I spent a lot of time mapping the county schools, working with them. I actually worked with the mayor of Potlatch. We actually formed his very first National Night Out program together, which was really fun, and he always invited me back. And then other than that, I just took as much training as they would give me to do as much as I could, so that I could be as much helper and as much service as I could to the people I'm serving. But more importantly for me, it's the leadership aspect that I got from it, the ability to shape and mold people and really inspire them, because motivation comes from within, but inspiration comes from without. Okay, inspiration isn't always something that is inside people. It's something that you're inspired to do, and motivation is really hard to do if you're not motivated. I mean, it's really hard to motivate people. And so that's one of the things I've always really enjoyed doing, was really getting in and creating a team atmosphere. I've studied a lot of leadership styles, and I've kind of latched onto one specific style, and it has absolutely been nothing but successful. So,
yeah. So from all of that, it sounds like you have been basically everywhere around this county as far as the law enforcement side of things goes. What are some of the more interesting or impactful experiences you've had, whether that was your job at Latah County or whether it was your job in the state?
I've had a lot of impactful experiences as a law enforcement officer, right? You know, I'm not much of an award guy. I've only got, I think I got one award. It was a life-saving award that I got for reviving a lady on the side of the road who'd had a heart attack right in front of me with an AED. Thank goodness I had that thing. It's hard to put my finger on it, but I'll tell you, the most inspiring thing was when I was a school resource officer. I think that's when I got my most yardage, when I realized what my real calling was in law enforcement, was to change how law enforcement looks at itself with regards to how it relates to the public and what the public has, or the public plays a part in that. Because I feel like there's that boundary there where people really don't know what law enforcement officers do, and it bothers them. A lot of them are, don't understand why things are happening. And I think with time and built relationships in a different manner, you could bridge that gap a little bit. And probably when it comes time to get the actual support you need for the things you need, you don't have to fight so hard.
Yeah, because they already know what's going on.
That's
and they're
correct.
more on the same page.
That's correct, and that's what I've been doing. I've met with every city council, except I haven't met with Bowville yet, but I've met with every city council kind of explaining to them what my format was going to be, and they were very receptive to it. I'm not changing anything, I'm just adding to it. I'm not increasing the budget, I'm just increasing expectations.
That is something I've yet to hear of many other people doing when it comes to the campaigning side of things, visiting all of the city councils. How did you go about doing that?
I just called them and said, hey, can I get on your agenda? I want to come talk to you and let you know who I am and what I'm doing. Most of them remember me. There was somebody from the city council that remembered me. But I just wanted them to know that I'm not just another candidate. I'm not just looking to wear the badge and drive the pretty car and be a figurehead. I want to grow the sheriff's office in the right direction. I want to make the sheriff's office a community policing outfit that is actually part of the community, not just somebody who drives through it or responds to it.
So let's unpack that a little bit more, because you're bringing up the idea of a candidate for sheriff as some sort of figurehead. Would you say that would that be your assessment of the Latah County Sheriff's Office as it currently stands, or is that something you see as a temptation for it to be just because of
I think
its
it could be a
position?
great temptation for it to be. Managing what somebody else or others have built is not too hard when you understand how they work. Really, the only thing you have to avoid are major issues. And if you really don't step outside your bubble, major issues don't really become a problem. When you try to create something or you try to move something in a certain direction, there's some risk in that. You get some pushback, you get some people that just don't like it, and that's okay. I'm more than prepared for that. I'm not the guy that wants to be everybody's buddy, but I am the guy that has an open door and that cares about every single person that I've ever managed to the point where they're more important than me. I'm not the most important guy. My job is to support the people that I manage, that I supervise, not to have them lift me up. Okay, that's the leadership style that I've adopted, and it's just unbelievable when you inspire people because you believe in them and you lift them up it's amazing what they can do because they didn't even know they could.
Yeah. And is that something that you've come to based on experience, or?
It is. It is. When I became a sergeant with the state police, I've always been in a leadership situation my whole life, in sports and in general. But I kind of was lost a little bit on how to inspire people, and I got thrown a bone by a guy on some books, and it was by a former Navy SEAL, Jocko Willink.
Oh, okay.
All of his books, Extreme Ownership, Leadership Strategies and Tactics, and then Leadership Dichotomies. And he's got, I think, 2 more books right now I haven't read yet, but I've listened to like a couple of those books multiple times because you always get some, nugget out of it again. Mm-hmm. But when I started leading in that fashion, I started seeing things that I'd never seen before. I saw people who didn't believe in themselves, were capable, were okay, doing fine, turn into superstars because somebody gave them the tool to do it. It's not about me being the best leader in the world. It's just about me wanting to lift those up around me. And that's what true leadership is. It's not leading from the top down, it's leading from the bottom up. Mm-hmm.
And as far as the current landscape looks like in the world of Latah County law enforcement, are there particular tools that you see the Sheriff's Department as either being deficient in or something that you would like to add to turn them from capable to superstars?
Yes, of course. I always have the idea that I can make things better. As far as the Sheriff's Office sits now, the only thing I can say about it is that it looks the exact same as it did when I left in 2013. It hasn't really changed. And part of that bothers me is that they only have 1 school resource officer. Do I think we need to hire another? No, but I have a plan for that too. Okay, you don't need 10 school resource officers. You don't need 2. What you need is a commitment from your deputies to buy in to what we're doing. Okay, and that is to, what's the word I'm looking for? Invest in the people they police. Because if you invest in people you police, it suddenly becomes more human.
Yeah, what does that look like on a practical level as far as individual deputies investing in their community, so to speak?
Well, I have a lot of ideas on how to make that happen. It's getting in there and finding out, what the budget does allow. Because I don't, like I said, I have no intentions of going, I need more money. I want to raise expectations in the sense that, say you have a school resource officer. We have, 8 separate schools in the county, right?
Something like that.
Not including Moscow.
Right.
Because you have elementary schools, middle school, high school, right? Or junior high, high school. You have 1 school resource officer. I was that guy for 3 years. That's a pretty thin slice of bread. You can pretty much see through it. You're running, okay? And if you're actually investing in those schools and teaching in those schools and investing in the kids, it becomes even more taxing because it takes more time. Well, my idea would be to involve every deputy and have a school resource officer that is available to develop programs, teach them to the deputies, work with them so that we can spread out and hit those more, be more present in a positive light, not just there when somebody calls us because Johnny punched Bob in the nose and we have a battery situation and we need to deal with it, or we found drugs. Okay, those are all things that are necessary. But what I found was, and one of your questions hit me right on the nose, was why did I run? What I found is that the relationships that I made with those kids, I saw true change. Because you can't ever get rid of drug dealers. They're not ever going to go away. You're not going to get rid of alcohol. But if you take away their customers, you win. Okay? That's what true authority is supposed to do. It's supposed to show people that living within a certain parameter isn't me taking away your fun. It's me allowing you to live your life in such a way that A, you don't encroach on this guy over here, but B, you're being safe. You're doing the right things. Okay? And there's nothing wrong with it. You don't have to make the same choices that your friends do. You don't have to make the same choices your parents do. And that's where I got the most yardage. And that's when I decided I was going to run. I had a kid that I hadn't seen in, golly, I think the last time I saw him was 2011. And he was about yay high the last time I saw him. And he came, yelled my name across the grocery store, and I didn't know who it was. And he says, "Do you remember me?" And this guy's 6'2" with a beard. And I'm like, "No." I'm like, "What did I do?"
Exactly.
But he said, "I was in one of your boys' groups." He goes, "This is my name." I'm not going to give his name, but he goes, "I just want to tell you the impact you had on my life." He goes, "And I just wanted to thank you for taking the time to do that." And that's when I said, "Okay, God." Again, that kept keep putting in my path. And I said, "Okay, I'll put my name in that." So I went home and told my wife, I said, "Guess what? I'm running for sheriff."
Well, that is quite the transformative experience.
Yeah.
One thing, just based on some of the stuff you said about your approach to community engagement, just to play devil's advocate for a second, because this is Idaho, and a lot of people in Idaho just broad brush look at the whole world of government and say, look, as long as you leave me alone and I can do my thing, we're not going to have an issue. If there are issues, that's when you get involved, but otherwise...
That's okay.
Would you say that that is in contrast at all to what you're describing in terms of involved, cultivating a relationship with these?
I don't think you're going to have as much of that as you think in Idaho. Now, I could tell you probably 3 different areas in Idaho, in this county alone, and the people themselves that I wouldn't go approach necessarily. Because I know they don't like law enforcement, they don't like government, but they're also very outspoken about it. Okay, that's fine. All right, I'm not talking about those people. Okay, you're always going to have those people. Would I like to help those people? Would I like to change their mind? Absolutely, but you can't force it. Okay, that's just not something. My idea of becoming a part of a community is not just going there and sitting in a car and running traffic. Okay, and pulling people over or responding to 911 calls. I mean, that's all important. We do that. Okay, but my idea is that you're going to city council meetings. Okay, there isn't just one school resource officer trying to spread himself out among games. If there's 5 deputies on, there isn't any reason why they can't all be attending a game at a school. Okay, there's no reason why they can't walk around and talk to people. The best intel I got as a deputy was when I was a school resource officer. Because people talked to me and I was willing to talk to them. I didn't just go, "Oh, no, I can't talk to you. I'm busy." No, I just carried on a conversation with them, which usually led down the road to, "Hey, did you know this was going on?" "Oh, hey, thanks. I'll look into that." As a matter of fact, I heard something about that. Now I have 2 people.
Ah, gotcha. Okay.
Now we have something to go on. That's my idea of what community policing is. Anybody can sit in a car, run radar, and pull people over for doing 30 and a 25 or 35 and a 25. Okay, responding to calls, that's part of duty. Okay, but engaging people, I use this analogy. The average police officer is about 6 foot tall, give or take, right? Some of them bigger, some of them smaller. Not a one of them is afraid to face down a 250-pound man. But you put them in front of a room of 10-year-olds, they're scared to death. Why?
Yeah.
Because they can't give them orders. They have to engage them in a separate manner. Okay? They have to talk to them and they have to respond to them in a different way. It puts humanism back into policing. When I became a school resource officer, it's where I really learned how to be a policeman. I learned what my job is. I am not the exception. I am the standard. Period. Okay. Do I make mistakes? Yes. Human beings. They're never going to get away from that. Okay. But I've always been accountable. I've always taken it on the nose when I had to. If I did something wrong, I stood up to it. But I don't have any skeletons in my closet because it's one thing I taught kids. You always tell the truth. You never have to remember what you said. And I've always lived by that. So that's kind of my idea of what a cop should look like. That's true authority to me. That's somebody who understands their role. You're not just there to arrest people. You're there to educate them, become a part of their life so that they understand limits. And those limits aren't a bad thing anymore. Okay? So even when I had to police people in the sense that maybe even guys I had to arrest, I can probably count on one hand in 15 years how many times I got the finger when I arrested somebody. The rest of the time I got a handshake, a thank you, or a hug. Okay? Why? Because I treated them like a human being. Okay? I had that inside me because that's the way I chose to police. Okay, didn't make me unsafe. Okay, I have an advantage. I'm a big person. I have a lot of command presence when I get out of a car. You know, as a trooper especially, you got the big hat on, the boots. I'm 7 feet tall. You know, walking up to your car. But it's a little different when you're in a school. You got to pare that back because you can be intimidating rather than commanding. There's a big difference. Okay, people respect command. They don't like intimidating. Okay, and that's what I tried to work to not be. And when I led the guys in my groups, the state police, that's what we worked on. There is no reason why you can't be safe and be nice. Okay, but when it's time to not be nice, don't be nice anymore.
Right. Don't mix the categories.
That's correct. That's correct. That's what we were trained to do anyway. But what ends up happening is you get into this real comfortable pair of shoes in law enforcement where it's just easier to not be nice. Okay, it's just easier to say, no, this is what's going on. No, this is it. That's it. I'm telling you what to do. Just be quiet. I wore those shoes for a couple years and it was very uncomfortable and I didn't like it. It made me feel horrible. And so that's one of the things that I want to focus on is that it's okay to treat people as people and still be safe at it. You get more yardage than you ever will walking up to that car and giving out orders. Okay, it just doesn't work in today's world. I mean, I don't know if you notice or not, but people really don't like being told what to do. You know, and when you walk up to a car nowadays, after 2020, after George Floyd, making a traffic stop was miserable. People were rude. They just, you know, for the most part, most of the people were okay, but that age group 30 and under, it became a test of wills. I mean, they were going to push it as far as they could because they had been told they could, or at least given that example. They don't really understand that they really can't do that. And then when you have to enforce, they get really angry. I used to teach a class in school called Turning 18, Rights and Responsibilities when dealing with law enforcement. Best class I ever taught. It was so fun. We would set up traffic stops in class and I would say, okay, you're the driver, you've been drinking and you hate cops. Your friend over here is just wants to go home and wants you to be quiet, and the two in the back seat, I just want you to just do whatever you want. Okay, you know, and then we would do another traffic stop where I'd say, okay, do what you think you can do. Whatever you think is legal, you just do it. And it was amazing for them to find out what they really were doing that was wrong, that could really get them in trouble. And they're like, well, that's not what they said. I said, well, who's they? Well, YouTube.
You're dealing with a lot of that, I imagine.
So I kind of went down a rabbit hole there, but I guess what I'm getting at is that policing isn't just about arresting people. Policing isn't just about DUIs, drug dogs, TAC teams, cars, guns, boots and vests and all that crud. Policing is about people. At its core, it's always been about people. And if you can't deal with people at that level on a regular basis, you're going to separate yourself from them and you're not going to get the support you need when you need it.
So just to make that real practical for a second, I think a lot of people's biggest example in recent time would be the whole, not even the George Floyd side of things, but just the whole era, late 2019, 2021 of COVID and everything that was involved in the variety of mask mandates, that sort of thing. What would you say would have ameliorated the situation, or how would you have addressed that situation if, you know, you're sheriff back then, this is the context?
Well, first of all, the mask mandate, on the legal side of things, based on the law itself, under an emergency situation, they had certain rights to do certain things that they did. Okay. However, that doesn't mean, as a law enforcement officer, you hammer people into the ground because they disagree with it. Okay, because we're in America, and quite frankly, being told you have to wear a mask every day was pretty tough. I mean, even as a law enforcement officer, I was like, I got to do what? I mean, because I had just come back from double knee surgery when the COVID hit.
Oh man.
Right, and I'm like, what do I do now? I got to wear a mask all day, which was okay. I mean, whatever, because that was the policy they put in place. So when we just did it. As far as the things that went on, I'm not going to be shy about telling you that nobody would have been arrested on my watch because it was wrong, and I can give you about 1.3 million reasons why. And the reason I say that isn't because they didn't have the right to, because just because you have the right to do something doesn't mean you should. Okay, you have to discern that moment when, okay, do I really need to do this? Is this really something, or is it a political move? Okay, is it me trying to make sure that my constituents, majority, are happy? Okay, I don't know. What I can tell you is that as a sheriff, when armchair quarterbacking is very easy. But as a sheriff or as a leader, I probably would have had that discussion with the chief and the sheriff prior and made the decision, you want to paper people, paper them, because paper is easy to reverse. Arrests are not. Okay, so just because you're enforcing this mask mandate doesn't mean people have to go to jail. Okay, there are ways to enforce and police in such a way that you still get your point across, but you're not crossing the line with the very people you're supposed to protect. And so I kind of, that's kind of one of my sore spots, because I wasn't working the weekend that happened here in town. My wife was there though, and she came home and told me, and I went, what? I was pretty much lost. And the following weekend, this is the part that kind of irritates me. The following weekend, and I'm not naming names, but my team was running perimeter. The state police, we were in town to run backup, and also kind of respond to calls for the PD and things like that, because they were busy. A lot of people in town. Yeah. And a lot of outsiders that weren't from this area. Well, I heard a radio call. They had a fight. It was by the old police department, where the old police department is now.
Yeah, I remember this.
Well, I got there. It had been broke up. I understood what went on. I interviewed people, kind of talked to them. Was talking to the PD, and I basically, as a law enforcement officer, there was 3 different crimes committed, and not a single person went to jail. But yet, the previous weekend, they went to jail for standing too close to each other.
Interesting.
So as a police officer, that kind of rubbed me a little wrong. I'm thinking, well, wait a minute. This was an assault, a battery, and an ag battery. They all occurred right here. Somebody needs to go to jail. And nobody did. And we weren't the lead on that. And as an agency, you don't step into that stuff. Okay, they made their decision, and I'm not going to question their decision, but I didn't agree with it. And I don't mind saying that, because that's one of the reasons that people get rubbed the wrong way by me, is that if you ask me a question, I'm going to tell you. Be careful what you ask, though.
And here we are.
Right. And I don't mind saying that, because it bothered me to my core. That why wouldn't you? It just didn't make any sense to me. So stuff like that. That's one of the reasons I want to be a sheriff.
Yeah, it sounded like for a little bit there you were drawing a distinction between what you view as the law, the legal side of things, and then political maneuvering or politics.
Correct.
Is that generally your frame of mind about things, that there's a separation between law and politics?
I think there should be. The fact that you have to be political as an ambassador as a law enforcement officer is one side of it. But to have my strings pulled by somebody, that isn't going to happen. That doesn't work for me. It never has. Hence the reason I usually was in trouble with my command staff. For the fact that I'm very outspoken. I have no problem stating when I see something wrong. Sometimes I do it more voicefully than I should. But at the same time, if I don't, nobody ever does. I mean, you have to have more people like that.
Mm-hmm.
You see it's wrong, say something. Why aren't you?
Mm-hmm.
Because if you just keep letting it happen, they're going to run roughshod over you.
Mm-hmm.
It's never going to change.
And to tie that into the stuff you were saying about community, if you don't have those interconnected relationships at that point, then it might not matter whether or not you're one of those people saying something, speaking out against something
Correct.
you think is wrong, because you don't have that relationship built in. It's just we're strangers yelling at each other now, and we don't really have a means towards the end of
That's correct.
getting along.
That's correct. When you're dealing with somebody who you know has got your best interests, your response is a lot different. It's more of a response rather than a reaction.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, that's just what I've known from my experience in law enforcement. I have had those moments where I reacted, and it was wrong.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I'd rip somebody's head clean off. Maybe I had a bad day. You know, I'd have to go back and I'd have to apologize.
Mm.
There were many times that I would sit in my police car, and I'd have to tell them, "Hey, man, I just want to tell you, I was way too loud. I'm really sorry. You're right." They were upset, and I'm like, "You're right. You have a right to be upset. I'm having a bad day, and it isn't your fault."
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we do tend to live in an era where people are very, people find difficulty in making amends, not even necessarily because they just are that bitter towards another person, but because the very fact of admitting that you did something wrong is really hard.
Yeah.
Whether there's a lack of forgiveness that's just part of the cultural moment that we're in, or whether it's just more and more difficult to say, I messed up.
Yeah.
It's definitely an issue.
And even doing something right and doing it the wrong way, you still have to own it. I mean, I've done that many times, and I just tell people, I shouldn't have said that, but it doesn't mean I'm wrong.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, maybe I could have went about it a different way, but I've always been that person, and unfortunately, it was part of my undoing in the end, because I saw so many things happening and so many people unwilling to speak. I felt like I had to speak for them, because I'm like, this is wrong. This shouldn't be happening this way.
Mm-hmm.
And it wasn't received well.
Yeah. Are you referring to your time as a law enforcement officer at the state?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah, and I loved my time there for the most part. I loved the guys I work with. I just had a hard time with the way some things were done, and maybe a lot of times maybe I went about it the wrong way in stating it. But as a supervisor, and as what I've learned about understanding leading people, people are who they are, and you have to let them be who they are. And if you try to form them into who you are, you're going to create an enemy. You're going to create somebody that doesn't want to work with you because they're not you. You have to learn to play to their strengths rather than try to have them play to your strengths.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, I had guys that were like, I just want to pull my hair out. I'm like, why do you do these things? But in the end, what I found is that I took a lot of those things that were driving me crazy and I turned them into strengths.
Mm-hmm.
By explaining to them, I love this about you.
Mm-hmm.
This is my favorite part of you. It's also my least favorite part of you. Is there a way that we can figure out how to make this work together? So, and I had a lot of success with that. I mean, it's okay. Hello.
Hello.
I think I supervised, 7 years. I had the same team, usually 2 years. So I think I was about ready to change teams when I left the state police again.
Mm-hmm.
For whatever reason, most of the time, with the exception of maybe a couple of quarters, my team led the district in stats, led the district in everything.
Mm.
Not because I'm a great leader, but because they were inspired to do so.
Mm. So you talk about playing to the strengths of each individual member of the team, and then you just end up with a very
Not
strong
turn them into
team.
me.
Yeah.
I turn them into them, who they can be best at.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, use their strengths to make them better. Not say you can't do these things. What you're talking to a 25, 35, 40-year-old man who's had a personality set for a very long time, and now you're going to tell them they can't be that person anymore?
Right, right.
Really? That doesn't work.
Mm-hmm.
You have to work with them. You have to really understand them. And if you're not willing to take the time to understand them, I usually rode with my guys all the time so we could have long conversations. We'd not just talk about law enforcement, we talk about their families, we talk about their problems, we talk about anything they wanted to talk about. I had them over to my house for barbecues, just to relax. I'd cook for them, you know, and say, just sit back, I got all this, you know, this is a reward for you just busting your rear ends for me. I didn't ask for you to do that. You did that on your own. You know, I just gave you the opportunity to do it. So that's how I lead, and that's exactly how I want to continue to lead. I wanted to build leaders for tomorrow, not just in Latah County, because most of these guys aren't going to stay here. They're going to go other places. Do we want to send great leaders other places, or do we want to send people that aren't great leaders? I want to build leaders for tomorrow, and that's really important to me. That legacy of why we do what we do. It's not about wearing the gun, it's not about the car, it's not about the arrest. It's about the respect that the badge has always had for me from the time I was a little boy till now, that I don't think it has anymore. People don't have the same respect for cops.
Yeah. And I guess building off of that, one thing that people have asked about when it comes to any level of law enforcement throughout the past few years is question of when trust is lost in a particular agency or a particular individual or an office like sheriff, how do you work towards restoring people's trust in that office, in that
Diving into the community, man. You got to dive into the community. When I became the school resource officer, they hadn't had one in 10 years. It took me a year and a half just to get invited to the first school to teach. That was me going there every week to the schools, every week. I did not relent. Hey, what can I do for you today? Is there anything I can do for you today? Hey, I'd like to teach a class. Hey, I really want to be a part of this. And once I got in there, I couldn't schedule enough time. I started doing DUI recreations throughout the county. I started doing DUI classes, drug classes, basic classes on just following the rules, you know, bullying classes in the elementary school, understanding conflict resolution, how to deal with things that are really out of your control because there's no such thing as control, but your response can dictate the outcome. And so, you know, teaching those classes, it was just, that's how you take the sheriff's office or any office that has lost the confidence of the people it polices and you get it back. You invest in them. You can't just say, well, we're going to do a better job. We're going to patrol more. We're going to get drug dog. We're going to do these things. People don't care about that. What they care about is the fact that they know you care about them.
And that takes, once again, that interpersonal, like making time, making connection, and being pretty committed to that. And it sounds like, you know, the temptation, of course, is that the method you're describing sounds like it does take a lot of time. It does take a lot of effort, personal investment. You know, you're getting up early, coming home late, that sort of thing, which would maybe make the other options, where it's just like, oh, I can just check off the box that I did this, seem just more convenient, easier. You get more sleep at night.
Yeah, no, you don't get more sleep at night because you end up getting called out. I'm not asking for more overtime. Okay, I was a deputy too. Okay, and I know how much time is spent doored up with people doing this. Okay, because I did it. You can't. I mean, no one, not one of them can deny it because I was one of them. I was a state trooper. Okay, people door up all the time. Okay. Well, instead of being doored up, why aren't you visiting the school? Or teaching a class, or visiting City Hall. Hey, is there anything going on with code enforcement I need to know about? Anything you need help with? Okay. The other thing that I really want to have happen, it's something that is kind of my dream goal for the sheriff's office, is to have access to a deputy in person a certain amount of hours every week in every town. So they don't have to drive all the way to Moscow to visit a deputy in person, or the deputy isn't having to drive all the way from Moscow to somebody's home. Most people would much rather say, hey, you mean he's in town? He's here? Yes, you can go down to this place and he's there for you to take a report and you can talk to him, or he can come to your house, whichever you like.
So something of a law enforcement office hours situation.
Yes. Yes, and it's very doable. Okay, but it has to do with patrol scheduling. It has to do with management. It has to do with understanding time management. Okay, and knowing that these things are possible. Yes, are there going to be calls that get in the way? Of course. Okay, is there going to be a crash that you got to respond to? Of course. Those things aren't going to change. Okay, but that doesn't mean you don't make the effort to make things better.
Yeah.
Because there's always time. Always.
It's interesting because having sat in a couple of the county meetings for some time now, it always seems like a big stressor to them is the resource side of things, but time isn't usually mentioned as one, maybe because it's assumed that time is already taken up with everything. Are there any particular ways in which you see, or how to phrase this, what does a restructuring of an entire office's time to allow for what you're describing look like?
Okay, well, let's take for instance that we have contract time in every county that's required, right? Okay. If you are actually delegating that out or requiring it, assigning it out in the proper manner, you already have deputies in those areas, right? Okay. Well, there isn't any reason why a collaboration and coordination with a school resource officer regarding a certain class that needs to be taught, because he's in another school teaching the same class and he's explained to you how to do it, there's any reason why you can't go do it. Okay? I'm not talking about full time. I'm talking about a complete and total team effort with regards to relational situations in schools and communities. If you have, I don't know, I think they have 16 deputies, something like that, and 3 sergeants. One of those is a school resource officer. In the summertime, they have one that is a what they call them, the forest deputy.
Okay.
Drives the forest service roads, does those sorts of things. Okay. Well, there's no school in the summertime, right? So really, he's going to be back in service come wintertime. He's going to be available. The school resource officer, being the guy that is going to be developing these programs in the schools, should be teaching, coordinating, and educating the deputies on how to teach those classes and work with them so that everybody knows how to do it. So when I left the state police, I'll give you an example. I had started getting back into the schools. I said, hey, would you guys mind if I just started going to schools? And they said, what for? I said, because I want to start getting back into schools and educating them. I said, the state police has a lot to offer. I said, we have a lot of training. I said, can you imagine what a calculus class would do if I showed them a crash formula that shows how to do vaults and get the speed from a vault from the time it takes off? They're like, that's not a bad idea. I said, what about DUI? What about alcohol physiology? Understanding how alcohol affects your body. Okay, all of those things. So I started going to these schools, and I could not stop getting requests. And not just from the regular schools, from the reservation schools too. And so what I did was, at that point, once I got the base, I said, okay, this week you're going with me. I'd grab one of my troops and I'd say, you're going with me. Why? I'm going to teach you to teach. What? I'm like, yeah, you're going with me. I'm going to teach you to teach. And you're going to teach this because this is what you're really good at, and I'm going to show you how to teach it. Because I was a teacher, okay? And I understand that. I understand how to grab a class and get their attention. It was phenomenal. All of a sudden I got calls coming in for these troops that had gone out and done classes, and they're like, hey, yeah, we want them back. Hey, can they come to this school and do this? Hey, can they do it? And I no longer had to do it. All I did as a school resource officer was coordinate it. And if they were busy, I could go to the other school that was requesting it and do it myself. Okay, that's what I'm talking about. It's called collaboration. Okay, if you collaborate correctly, there isn't any reason why you need more than one school resource officer who could coordinate all of it. As long as they're learning and working together. It works. Right? I've done it.
Yeah.
It's really not that hard. It's just a matter of commitment. Okay? Because if you ask most guys that are on the road, they may not say it in front of this camera, but in a closed door, they say, I don't want to go in class and teach. I ain't got time for that. I don't want to do that. I'm not good at that. I want to be around kids. Why? Because it's easier. Not because they're bad people or they're, guerrillas or, mean. It's just because it's uncomfortable for them. Mm-hmm. Well, I want it to be. That's how you grow. Right?
Yeah, yeah.
If you're always in your comfortable spot, do you ever grow? No, you become stale.
Mm-hmm.
That's how you grow. And that's what I want to do. I want to push them to grow.
Yeah.
Because they aren't growing. It's just kind of the same as it was when I left.
Mm-hmm.
So they just have nicer cars and some better equipment.
Mm-hmm. So one thing I want to bring up, changing gears a little bit here. Mm-hmm. So obviously it's a big election year for a number of reasons. Mm-hmm. And so people end up paying attention to the political side of things more than they do typically, like mm-hmm. during a city year or during a non-presidential year. And so they're looking at the county side of things and they see a bunch of candidates and they don't really know how to make sense of them outside of, well, typically it's the Republican, Democrat, conservative, mm-hmm. liberal dynamic. But that's not at all the case in the sheriff's race this year. You've got one guy who's a registered Republican and two guys who are running unaffiliated, as far as I can tell. Mm-hmm. And that can just be a category error for folks who are just looking at it in terms of those categories. Now, obviously, as you've brought up before, you're not thinking in those categories when it comes to law enforcement per se, mm-hmm. but what would you say would be the proper differentiator for you between the other two guys who are on the ballot?
Well, the reason I went unaffiliated wasn't because I'm not a conservative. I'm very conservative. I'm a devout Christian. I love the Lord. Mm-hmm. Trying to love him more every day because he makes me better. I'm a family guy. I believe in gun rights. I believe in the amendments. I believe in the Constitution to my core. I was a history teacher too. What differentiates me is that the reason I went unaffiliated is because when I'm a law enforcement officer, I'm not a Republican. I'm not a Democrat. I'm not a constitutionalist. I'm not a whatever they call it. Gosh, I can't remember the name right now. But
thinking libertarian.
Libertarian. I'm not those things, because the law is blind to those things. Okay, the law isn't blind to who you are necessarily. What makes you who you are and how you apply those laws. Okay, being ethical, being mindful, being understanding, empathetic, those types of things. That's who you are. The law itself has nothing to do with politics. At least it didn't used to. Okay, and that's what I really differentiate myself as, is that I'm not going to treat one faction different than another faction. I'm not going to treat one situation different than another. Everything the sheriff's office is supposed to do as a sheriff is based off the constitutional rights of its constituents. Mm-hmm. It doesn't have to do with their sexual orientation, whether they're a Christian, what church they go to, whether or not they are a professor at the college, or whatever it is. Those things don't matter. What matters is how you deal with that person, how you apply the law in that situation, and was it done fairly? Okay, that differentiates me. The big separator is that I don't play favorites. I don't look the other way, and and I hate to say this, but I don't cut people breaks just because I know them. Okay, I cut people breaks based on my limits. Give you an example. If I pull you over, say I'm a state trooper and I pull you over, before I even get you pulled over, I already have decided whether I'm giving you a ticket. Now, does that surprise you? I've already decided that. You don't get to make that choice. You're not going to talk me out of it. I've already decided, because I have a limit. I have a standard that applies to everybody. Mm-hmm. Period. Everybody gets treated the same. Okay? If I walk up to that window and suddenly there's an extraordinary circumstance, like, my wife's in labor, or I'm on my way because my father's in the hospital dying, those are extreme circumstances. Okay? But those are the only things that ever affected it, because everything else, I set standards for a reason, because fair is supposed to be part of what we do. Mm-hmm. Okay? You can't always be completely fair. I mean, people never believe you're fair anyway when you give them a speeding ticket. I mean, there are a few, of course, that say, "Oh yeah, you got me." But that's what differentiates me from a lot of law enforcement officers who they kind of use their discretion pretty loosely. And I'm not that guy. and neither will anybody that works under me. Okay, the idea here is to police people. They understand why you're doing it. They respect you for doing it, but you're not cutting them breaks because and we're definitely not cutting each other breaks. That's one of my biggest pet peeves. Is seeing cops give other cops breaks because they do the job. I'm not a cop hater in that sense. Everybody's like, well, you don't like, no, that's not it. We are the example, not the exception. Period. And I told my troops when I was a manager, a supervisor, I said, if you get pulled over, I do want to know about it. I said, but I'm going to tell you this, if you even mention the fact that you're an Idaho State Trooper, I said, you're going to answer to me. Because at that point, when you're driving your personal vehicle and you're speeding, you're not a trooper. You're a civilian speeding. Period. No idea how many times that comes up.
Yeah. Is it something that you would describe as an issue here in Latah County?
It's an issue everywhere.
Everywhere?
Yeah, the state police, we kind of have a bad rap when I was in the state police, because we didn't give people breaks. I can't tell you the amount of police officers, either retired or active, that I gave tickets to that I got a handful of written complaints because they were angry that I didn't cut them what they call professional courtesy. And I was never really mean about it, but I was pretty curt about it in the fact that, my idea of professional courtesy is you don't make me pull you over in my state. Just obey the law. It's pretty simple. But yeah, it's a problem everywhere. And I want to change that.
Yeah.
I get asked that question a lot. Especially since I've been running for sheriff. I get asked that question a lot. What are you going to do about this? You don't need to worry about that. It's not going to happen. And if I find out it happens, I'll take care of it.
Yeah.
And that's, most people know me when I say that. They're like, yeah, you will.
Because you've been around a lot. It'd be a lot different, I think, if you'd be talking to somebody who was either brand new to the scene or brand new to the state, but says, all right, I'm going to come in and change a bunch of things, or I need to make sure that it all goes according to plan, and people look over and say, who are you?
Oh, you have no idea how many times you would pull somebody over and they'd say, well, this particular agency doesn't make me do that. Really? Can you give me a specific person? And of course, they wouldn't want to do that. But
well, there you go.
But yeah, for me, it's not about. It's about the piece of paper that you signed when you graduated from the Post Academy that says you're going to uphold the laws of the state of Idaho, the Constitution of the state of Idaho, and the Constitution of the United States of America. Which means you will follow the laws, you will keep your life unsullied, okay, and you will not abuse your power. We all sign the same document. Some people just look at it differently.
Yeah.
And I know, and I've known a few, more than a few, that believe that cops shouldn't give cops tickets. Cops shouldn't arrest cops. Why? They're not acting in the line of duty, or even if they're acting in the line of duty doing something illegal, you take care of it. Okay? Doesn't mean it has to be a big blown up deal. You just take care of it. But anyway, that's kind of who I am. I'm pretty cut and dry there.
Yeah. Well, one question that comes up when it comes to just people in the general population trying to figure out more about law enforcement, because obviously it pervades like conversation whenever the local side of things comes up, but a lot of people aren't particularly familiar with the differences between, say, Moscow City Police, Latah County Sheriff's Office, and the Idaho State Troopers.
Right.
Do you mind unpacking the differences that you'd be able to describe to us between those offices?
The Moscow Police Department, they're not cross-deputized, so they can't leave the city. Okay. The deputies, of course, can enforce anywhere inside the county, including the city limits. Okay, so their jurisdiction is everywhere in the county. Whereas the state, the jurisdiction while I was working was the entire state of Idaho, border to border, everywhere. The difference between the Idaho State Police and a lot of state agencies is that we are police. See, a lot of places are patrol. Therefore, they aren't trained the same way. Okay, they're not trained in domestics. They're not trained in a lot of different things. They're specifically highway patrol, drug interdiction, DUI interdiction, speed, those types of things. So as far as the jurisdictional things concerned, when I was with the state police, you never try to what we call run over somebody's call. Okay, if it's a county call and you're responding and you overhear a crash or a 911 call, most of the time they didn't care if we took the crashes because that's what we did. And they're like, hey, thanks. But if there's a call for a domestic in progress or something like that, the state police doesn't go, oh, I'm here first, I'll take it. No, our job, what we did is we would, and I told all the guys that I managed, and this was a district policy, is that we don't want you to take the lead on that unless you have to. Okay. But when you're there, if you engage in that, then you are the lead. Okay, if you're going to engage in it and you're going to do it before the sheriff's office gets there, that's your call. So what we would try to do is we would try to maintain some type of order outside of taking over that call until the deputies could arrive, if we were first on scene. Okay, otherwise, if we got there, we would just be their backup.
Yeah.
Okay. Inside the city limits, state police, same thing for Moscow PD. They would do the same for us. If I was pulling over cars on Main Street or whatever, I would always get a backup from the Moscow PD normally. And they would, do the same for us. On the roads, the sheriff's office would back up the troopers when possible. Kind of hard to do because it's a big county.
Yeah.
But as far as jurisdiction is concerned, the sheriff is the ultimate law in the county. Between him and the according to the Idaho code, he and the attorney,
the prosecutor,
the county prosecutor. Those are the top cops in the county. Okay. Short of that, everybody else doesn't have that authority. That's just the way it is.
Yeah.
That's the way it's set up, and until it changes, that's the way it'll be if I'm elected. Which is why I call it the 3 C's of law enforcement: communication, collaboration, and cooperation. And if you're not continually doing those things in leadership, that's when problems start happening. And I can tell you that I never, as a deputy, never felt that there was a good relationship between the sheriff's office and the city, ever. And I don't know that that's changed.
Yeah.
So, and I still hear that there's not really a good relationship there. And I don't know why. I think it's wasteful. You should be working together. I mean, we're all the same goal, right? We're all on the same team.
Yeah. I guess to build off of that a little bit, sometimes the nature of conflicts, especially between groups of people like that, some of it can be more, I don't want to just say it's ideologically driven because there's all sorts of details there that I would have no idea about. But you can deal with situations, you've got 2 different leaders of 2 different departments and they're button heads or they're disagreeing on some, whether it's a turf war or some sort of finer point of how to carry a particular objective out. How do you go about conflict resolution in circumstances like that?
Well, first of all, you have to define the area of conflict, okay? And if you're not going to communicate and you're not going to collaborate and cooperate with those areas, you're never going to understand what your limits are or where issues are going to be when they arise. So in order to do that, you have to actually share that information, okay? Where do you sit on this issue, Chief? Because this is where I'm at. Where do we meet in the middle?
Yeah.
How do I get cooperation on this? If you want cooperation from me on this, how do we go about doing this? Because this is my belief.
Yeah.
Okay. And if you're not willing to do that and that communication line isn't constantly open, that's where the separation happens. And that's where that division happens, where I'm not going to call them. When there was a bad crash in Moscow, they didn't have any problem calling the state police, ever. Because they didn't want to deal with it. It's a lot of work. And they're busy. I mean, what do they handle? Like 50 calls, 60 calls a day, something like that, And some of them are, not so great. Some of them are, that show up, oh, this is really a call kind of a thing.
Yeah.
But they still have to go. So I can understand that. Same with the county. If they're on a call and there's a crash, my thing is that if you're not making every effort and I mean every effort to collaborate with the agencies around you in every way possible, then you've lost already. Because why not make your life easier? Why make it so hard? I mean, as a state police, and I'm not going to name agencies, I offered collaboration many times, and I was turned down. And it was free. I wasn't charging them anything. I wasn't asking for anything. I just wanted to do this. And they're like, no. Why? Pride? I have no idea. But as a sheriff, that won't happen with me. I want to bridge those gaps.
Yeah.
I want that to happen, because the more collaboration we have and cooperation with agencies, and I mean in every shape and form, how awesome is that? That we're all on the same page, rather than operating on different planes and then colliding into each other and being upset about it. That was always miserable.
Yeah.
You know, because the state police kind of has, you know, they do have a little bit of a stigma about them. They call us the Darth Vaders, the road pirates, you know, all of those things, and that's okay. That stuff didn't bother me. What bothered me is the lack of cooperation. That's what bothered me. Not all of them. You know, the guys that I knew real well got good cooperation, but a lot of times you just wouldn't get any. They didn't want any part of it.
Yeah.
And I don't agree with that. We're all doing the same job, man. We're all serving the same people, the residents of the state of Idaho. Figure it out.
Well, just to switch gears for one last time, obviously you've been on the campaign trail for a little bit now. Tell us a little bit about what your most interesting experiences has been as you've been out campaigning to be sheriff, and then what's on the road ahead for you.
Gosh, it's been so hard trying to get people to know who I am. I mean, there are a lot of people in the county that know me, and when they find out I'm running, they're like, "You're running? Really?" You know, I have signs up. I don't have a ton of signs up, and part of that reason is that I don't have a party helping me. When you sign on with a party and you are representing that party, they'll do all kinds of stuff to get you elected. I was up until this year and last year, I was a staunch Republican all my life, and so it's been really difficult to get my name out there. So I've done some social media stuff. You know, I have a Facebook page where I do little blurbs every now and then about what my plans are. I try not to let too much, the cat out of the bag too much, because I still have public venues I have to do with these guys, and there are going to be certain questions that are asked, and I don't want to, give them any ammunition to use my stuff.
Yeah.
But
so you are thinking politically.
In that fashion, yeah, because you can't make a change if you can't get in office. I mean, that's the truth of it, isn't it? I mean, it's kind of like running for legislature or running for president. You can't help anybody if you can't get elected. But the difference is that you have to flip that switch when you get elected.
Yeah.
That switch has to be turned off. I'm not there to have my strings pulled for anybody wanting certain things and they're going to give me something in return. That doesn't work for me. I've never been that guy, which is probably why I've had a hard time running for this position. But yeah, my goal is to do that. I think we have 3 public venues coming up. This was an opportunity which I really was happy about.
Yeah. My pleasure.
I've talked to Pullman radio station. I'm hoping to be doing an interview with Evan Ellis. On air. I've talked to the local radio station just about radio time, but my goodness, I mean, the cost of that is just astronomical, even at the price they give candidates. I don't have a big budget. I have my budget, and it's eating into it.
Yeah.
So, but that's kind of my plan, is just to keep, hammering away at it. Every chance I get, I talk to people. Somebody will say, "Hey, what are you up to?" "Hey, I run for sheriff." "Really? Well, tell me about it." I say, "Hey, go to my page," and we have a conversation much like we're having. And I'll say, "Can you do me a favor? Just go look at my page, and if you like it, share it. Share it to everybody, because that's really the only way I have an opportunity to really get out there, other than a few strategic signs here and there, and then most people pass those by and then forget about it by the time they get 20 minutes or 10 minutes past it.
Yeah.
Some people don't, but I've had 4 of them stolen, so some people don't. So all of them around the Troy area for some reason. Apparently, not a popular guy around Troy. Apparently,
I wonder why.
I don't know.
Unless maybe it's just a vendetta against yard signs. I know plenty of people get tired around seeing those.
Could be. I tend to. There's only a couple of them that I didn't ask permission, but they were in right-of-ways, and I thought, nobody's going to care. Those are the ones they took.
Yeah.
So maybe it was just somebody say he doesn't have the right to do that. Okay, fine. Can you give it back? They're expensive.
Yeah, fair enough.
If you think I'm wrong, great.
I'm
just let me
imagining
know.
that phone call right now. It's like, hey, like whatever, the city park or wherever the sign was up, and just say, well, I'm the guy who
took your sign.
Yeah, or I'm the guy who put the sign there.
Yeah.
Maybe it wasn't supposed to be there, but is there any way?
I did.
Oh, you did? Okay.
Oh yeah. I'm like, hey, I want it back. I'd like to have it back.
Man.
Yeah, I don't mind doing that. I mean, like I said, it's accountability, right? Mm-hmm. Stream ownership. Okay, that's how I have really, over the last 17 years of my life, just decided that's the way I'm going to live. Mm-hmm. It also, I look at it, it kind of ties into my faith. The guy that actually branded extreme ownership was Christ. Look at what he did. He took ownership of everybody's crap. At the end of the day, the guy in charge is the guy that's responsible. And that's kind of the way I lead. If somebody fails under me, yes, they made a mistake, but it's my failure because I am supposed to lift you up. I am supposed to get you where you need to be. So that's my responsibility. And if people want to just, in today's world, people like to do this. Well, it's not my fault. It's his fault. That's his fault. No, it's the guy in charge's fault. And he should have known about it. And if he didn't know about it, he better figure out the next time why. So it doesn't ever happen again.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, as far as getting my name out, radio, I hope, maybe a couple of spots getting closer, because I can't afford to every day.
Yeah.
I mean, at $9 a pop or something like that for 30 seconds, I think is what it is.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean,
give or take, which isn't horrible.
Mm-hmm.
I'm sure they're giving breaks to candidates and things like that, but when you start doing every spot, that adds up pretty quick.
Yeah, I mean, I've done cab rides that were shorter and cost more, but...
Yeah, well, I've never really done many cab rides, so...
You don't have to worry about them too much when you're in Moscow, because worst comes to worst, it's a 10-minute walk.
Yeah, I think the biggest cab ride I took was in Vegas once. It cost me like $50.
Oh, well, that makes sense.
Yeah, I mean, we were staying way off the strip, but I'm like, other than that, I don't think I've ever taken a cab ride.
Well, that's an interesting fact to bring up.
Yeah.
Well, I guess it depends. I don't know how many cab rides the average Idahoan has taken, but coming from outside the state, you see. I
can tell you they're taking more in the city of Moscow because it's unimaginable. It's unfathomable the amount of people that will get in their car from downtown Moscow and go to jail because they live 2 blocks away.
Oh man!
Because they refuse to walk or call a cab. I can't tell you the amount of conversations I had. Just people beating themselves up. Why didn't I walk? I don't know.
But here we are.
We're going to deal with it. So, but yeah, since the college cabs came in and a couple of the other people, the different Ubers, although I did have to arrest an Uber driver one night who was intoxicated.
Well, that's encouraging.
Who was on his way to a call.
Oh, man.
But for the most part, it's actually gotten better. I was pretty impressed. My former sergeant and I, we lived in this area, we hammered it pretty hard. There were many months where I was getting 25, 30 DUIs, and they were all in Latah County. Mm-hmm. That's a lot of drunk arrests in a small area.
Yeah.
And not many people live here.
Mm-hmm.
So to get that curbed, that's a big deal.
Yeah. Well, I think we're just about wrapped up.
Okay.
I just want to give you the opportunity to say anything that you think people who are watching this interview would want to hear, and then also let them know how they can best reach you.
The way to best reach me is through my Facebook page, which is Middleton 4 Sheriff 24. It's my name, Middleton, the number 4 Sheriff, and then the number 24. And if you just Google that or put it in your Facebook search, then you'll find me. that's kind of the easiest way to get a hold of me. But as far as, what I have to say, don't write me off because I'm not a Republican or a Democrat. You need to look at me as a person who wants to do the very best job I can for the constituents, not only of this county, but the residents of the state of Idaho. But I also want to build something. I don't want to just manage what's already been built.
Yeah.
I want to make it better. And I have a lot of plans to do that, but I can't do it unless I get elected. But other than that, I just hope people get out and vote and use their right to vote, but they actually research the people they're voting for. Take the time to do some research because the answers are out there if you really want to look. So,
Chris, thank you so much for our time.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
Great. And that was our conversation with Chris Middleton. As with all candidates, I highly encourage you to check them out yourself so that you can go into the election well prepared and educated. We'll have the relevant links posted with this video, and as always, if you have any questions, please reach out. I'm Aiden Anderson, and this has been Candidate Candids. We'll see you next time.